It's 8:35 on a Wednesday morning, and it is our friend Patrick Tuohey with the Show Me Institute joining us on KCMO. And Patrick found himself in this new documentary done by Kansas City PBS. It premiered just this past week, and it is titled A Tale of Three Cities, The Search for a KC Crime Fix. So you got a little cameo in there, huh?
Yeah, the director reached out to me because he knew I lived in Waldo, and he was asking about gunfire. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you live in Waldo, it's just a weekly event. And
it is. So you just hear it like, while you're sipping your morning cup of coffee. Sorry.
Sure. Mostly in the evening, of course. But and not just like bang, bang, but like rapid machine gun fire. And it's weird because it's not alarming. It's become such a part of background noise in the city. And, the director of the documentary is English, and he was just shocked that hearing that much gunfire would just become background noise. So, he found some clips from people's Ring cameras of just gunfire going off in the background. And again, used that to start off the documentary, talking about how across the city we've just kind of acclimated to this awful crime rate.
And when do you feel like, just as a resident of Waldo, that began, or it really started to become noticeable for you?
Well, I mean, I've been aware of the crime problem in Kansas City since I moved here in 2005, and mainly it was comparing it to Washington, D.C., where I had moved from. But you end up thinking it's an over there problem. It's not here. That is a tragic way to think about it, but it's common, I think, throughout the metro area, certainly throughout the city. We have given up, it feels, on solving this problem. Mm-hmm. Recently, when Sean Brady was killed just a few blocks from my house, I started thinking, do I need to change behavior? Do I need to talk to my daughters about what parts of town to avoid and what time of day? I mean, that was my neighborhood at 5:15 in the afternoon. And then talking to a bunch of dads at the Irish Fest, like I'm sure a bunch of people have done throughout Kansas City, where dads talk about, like, is there something else we need to do? Do we need neighborhood patrols? Do we need to hire private security? I mean, again, this was just a car break-in. Sean confronted them, and they shot him. Again, 5 in the afternoon. So many people are more aware of it, but there's a powerlessness. And the people we hire, this is the thing that frustrates me. The people that we hire to take care of this, the people who run campaigns and ask for our vote so that they can solve this, don't appear to know what they're doing.
That's well said. Patrick Tuohey is here with the Show Me Institute. So you wrote a piece, too, this past week for showmeinstitute.org, headlined, Kansas City Mayor Quentin Lucas gets basic policing numbers wrong. What was that in reference to?
So you've talked about the two public town halls held in Brookside and Waldo about crime. I missed those. So I headed to this, which I thought would be similar. It was a city council meeting, crime, public safety meeting, held at the library. And I was surprised, maybe shocked, that the majority of the people in the audience who rose to speak did not want a new jail. Did not necessarily want more police spending, wanted to talk about root causes and holistic approaches and incarceration without representation. It was kind of a willful ignorance of what's going on around us. And I wanted to write that piece because if people who had attended the Waldo and Brookside got the sense that there was a sense of city emergency everywhere, that was not the case at this city hall meeting. Now, again, there were business owners who stood up and said, the cost of repairing windows and keeping my restaurant open and protecting my workers is too great for me to bear for much longer. People talked about how the police need to be present, be more present. But it wasn't 100% alarm. It was some people who were kind of resisting the idea that we need more and better police. And so it was shocking to me. And to answer your specific question, Mayor Lucas presented some slides, some data about policing in Kansas City that were just wrong. Just typos in the data, kind of conflating two different types of things, and the numbers that he presented didn't match up with crime statistics that I was able to find. And so to me, it just reflected a incompetence or a lack of care or a lack of enough care to get basic numbers right that seems to be emblematic of what we're dealing with in Kansas City.
I mean, if you're still of the belief sitting here today that we're a root cause away from fixing the problem, then you're just part of it. I don't know what else to say at this point.
Well, and even if we were to somehow identify what those root causes were, it's 20 or 30 years.
Well, yeah, and the root cause, and even Quentin Lucas has said it on this show, we're the dads. We got to get dads back. We know if a dad's in the house, you have a much lower chance of crime, incarceration. You're going to finish, your education. You're going to do all those things that lead you to the chance of a prosperous life.
In fact, subsequent research has said if there's a dad in the neighborhood, if there is a male role model just somewhere nearby, that's good for children. But we don't want to talk about that. That's hard. And so we're left with this system where we have young men who are living in bad parts of town who are subjected to this life that you and I can't imagine. The things that you and I take for granted, like no one's going to try to shoot in our house, or I don't have to worry about any of my friends being shot. They don't have that. And I am interested in how that affects an individual's psychology. I think, frankly, if you grow up in a violent community like that and you don't have order and you don't have a relationship with the police, of course you bring guns to a rally, to a Chiefs rally. Of course you shoot first, because the cost of trying to de-escalate, the cost of being unarmed, the cost of waiting to respond is death. You shoot first or you die. And as barbaric as that sounds, that is a logical response to the environment that some of these young men are growing up with on the east side. And I get it. I don't advocate for it, of course, but we have got to interrupt that.
You're right. Patrick Tuohey's here. The Wall Street Journal had a piece this week. Contrary to media myth, U.S. urban crime rates are up. And it notes here the urban violent crime rate increased 40% from 2019 to 2023. The numbers are basically even in suburban and rural areas. And as they note here in the Wall Street Journal, what is that about? Well, that is, frankly, as they note here, leftist prosecutors have gained the strongest foothold in these urban areas. Police have been most heavily scrutinized, and where lax enforcement and prosecution have become common.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. It is so frustrating. One of the things the documentary goes over is just the lack of a good working relationship we've had for years in Kansas City between the police and the prosecutor. But look, the county has fallen down. The city has fallen down on providing a place where we can put criminals while they await trial or lock them up if they're sentenced. And everybody just wants to pass the buck. But we have got to interrupt the lives of these criminals. We've got to put them away. We're doing them a disservice, frankly, by not having them suffer the consequences of their actions. We're not helping them.
No.
They are just moving on to another bigger, worse crime.
And they'll end up dead. I mean, that's what's going to happen with too many of them. You try to give them a second chance, another outlook on life, have them pay the price that we've, elected to give them as a judicial system. And we just say, you know what? The problem is the real victims are the criminals themselves.
Yeah. And again, we get into a talk on this policy about race, about poverty, but the biggest victims of crime, certainly in Kansas City, are young black men, are poor people, and we want to disproportionately help those people. We want to focus resources to help those people, but that's also going to mean a disproportionate prosecution of young black men and probably of poor people who are committing these crimes. One of the most amazing things to me, and again, I have no inside knowledge, was that the folks that shot Sean Brady were immediately identified by the police, I think arrested the next day. I am confident that when police looked at surveillance videos, they knew who these guys were, because this was not their first rodeo. They had been involved with the criminal justice system probably for years, like so many have. And if you've got a prosecutor who won't prosecute for low-level nonviolent crimes, those criminals just move up the ladder. Yep. They move from nonviolent drug crimes to violent drug crimes to homicides. And it's not enough to be compassionate. No. It is not enough to be compassionate. We are doing these young men a disservice by by saving them from the consequences of their own actions.
Well said. Patrick Tuohey with the Show Me Institute. Nice job as always, my man. We got to check out the documentary, Kansas City PBS, A Tale of Three Cities, The Search for a KC Crime Fix, and your most recent article at showmeinstitute.org. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Patrick Tuohey on KCMO Talk Radio.